Good afternoon. Welcome to today's AGORA Talk. The subject of today's AGORA Talk is XR Curious. Please allow us to thank the city of Thessaloniki for providing the venue. Karen Cirillo will be moderating the discussion today. And Mr. Marcos Cholevas, the president of the Greek Film Center, will make a short introduction.
Thank you. Thank you everyone to be here. For us, as the public institution who support the creativity, the industry in the movies, we believe that it's very important not only to talk about the new elements that come in the creativity, but in the same time to support the creativity in this domain. So we established a pilot program, and now we finance films that we use the VR or the 360 or anything else as a pilot program to found the way that these new elements can be part of the cinematographic language and the visual language generally. So it's very important for us to have discussion like this that you will allow in a few minutes to know how this problematic in the creativity part of our industry can be more supported. So we try actually to make not only a financing support, but in the same time to open a discussion with the project that they can support, they can supply in this program. What is the real creativity in this area? Is only to use as elements in the cinematography language, or is a new language that we will see in the future? And this program is supported by the RRF that Greece have 2 years now. And few weeks before, we financed the first project. So thank you to have this opportunity to discuss.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here with us today. For those of you who are XR curious, we have a lot to unpack today. I was just thinking about the fact that, probably 50, 60 years ago, we were thinking about making documentary films and what cameras we use and where we find money, and now we're at that point again. But now we have an extra level of complication because XR encompasses way more than just using a camera, and there's so many different ways to make things. There's so many different challenges that are new. So we have a really wonderful panel here of people who are at various entry points in the XR industry, and I think it's really exciting that we can approach this topic from many different sides. So my name is Karen. I'm happy to be hosting here today. And I think we can just kind of jump right into it because I know there's a lot to cover. So I thought we could start by introducing ourselves from the entry point in which we are in working with XR. And then maybe just talking a little bit about our experience from there. So I will start to my far right with Stella.
The far right, I think.
On my furthest to
Hello.
my right.
My name is Stella Ntavara. I'm Greek, but I've been living in Copenhagen for the last 5 years, and I'm working for CPH Docs, the documentary film festival of Copenhagen, where I'm managing the CPH lab. It's the incubator training development program, has different names, but it's a development program for new projects, and the focus has been running for 13 years, but the last almost 8 or 9 we've been focusing on immersive and interactive media. And it's a program that has been, after an open call, we select 9 projects from around the world, and we work with them for almost 8 months, from September to our festival, which is in March every year, starting today in Copenhagen. And we work with different creators to develop their immersive and interactive projects with the help of mentors, residencies. It's an intense, almost 8 months program, and they come to the festival to present their prototype and network, meet all the new people they need to meet to continue the project and accomplish it.
And are the lab participants experienced XR makers or first-timers or a mix?
It's a very nice mix. I think it's one of the, as I was going through a bit like my thoughts, it's very interesting because it's a mosaic of people reflecting the changing environment, the permanently changing environment. So we have people that they're what we call digital natives, people that they tend to be a bit younger in age, but they are very experienced already with media, technology. You know, they've been playing with these things since their beginning. They come with a lot of energy, a lot of knowledge, maybe not a lot of experience when it comes to filmmaking per se, and the more classic filmmaker, but a lot of experience and knowledge when it comes to the technical and the technicalities. We have also very classic filmmakers that have been working on, classic storytelling over the years, and they want to see, is it a new language? Can it be something that goes around a film that they're doing? Can they have a film in the core and develop things around, like a performance, an experience that will just team nicely with their film? So it's always a nice mix of people, and we don't call them filmmakers. We always call them artists, because it's a more broad term to define people that they're experimenting with storytelling from different points of view, different entry points, and I like that we keep it so open. But it's a nice mix of experience, non-experience, emerging. Everybody is welcome to join the lab.
Thank you. Next we have Dimitris.
Hi, my name is Dimitris Delinikolas. I'm a filmmaker and animator. I've been experimenting with cinematic VR since 2016 and augmented reality projects, but I'm also here as a lecturer of the University of Athens, and that we started introducing classes of VR projects, of cinematic VR and new media. So I find it, I would like to give my experience of how the teaching of these new mediums comes into being.
I think you were also saying you have experience with cinematic VR in the context of advertising as well, correct?
Yes, since 2016, when it kind of blew up, there were advertisers that wanted to experiment with a medium, and even though it has not really established itself as a it's kind of a very niche medium, but I did have experience working with clients as I was working in commercials that they wanted to experiment with VR projects, mostly cinematic VR at the time.
Thank you. Now we have Mario.
I'm Mario Adamson. I'm a producer at a Swedish company called Sisyfos Film Production. We mostly do documentaries, but we have also done a couple of AR projects back in 2015, which was a little bit too early then because Pokemon Go just came around, so nobody understood what we were doing. But we got a second chance a couple of years ago, last year, with the same project we did then at the Venice Film Festival. So we are really learning on how it works and trying to understand the storytelling methods and ways, especially how to kind of, accompany our main thing we do. Is like the documentary or the feature films can be told in other ways and presented in different ways. So that's kind of where we are, and trying to think out of the box.
Thank you very much. Ellen, you are with NewImages Festival.
Hello, hi, I'm Ellen. I'm head of XR market in NewImages Festival. NewImages Festival is based in Paris, supported by Forum des Images. So for those who know a little bit about the French cinema, Forum des Images were public supported by the City Council of Paris in the center of Paris. And our festival will take place next month in 24 to 26 April. Voilà, so the XR market is probably, if I may say, probably the biggest XR content market in the world, because I have 50 projects in development. And we also have distribution market where you already have a finished project that you had not been to the film festivals or never been published. You're more welcome to join us, because I think it will be one of the challenges will be discussed later. The distribution of XR or immersive content is something the last mile to complete the ecosystem, or the necessary evil to mention anytime you put in your grant proposal, for instance. So distribution is unavoidable from our point of view. So in XR market, we have projects. Well, our XR market is pretty international because France is foremost very advanced in XR development, O&O funding and distribution, but also because I'm originally from Taiwan, so I have easier access to the Asian colleagues. So we have a big source of participants from Asia as well. We are 50% international. The other 50% are probably 20, 30% French, because we're in Paris. And France is very centric, where all the creators are mostly based in Paris. And then the other half would be the European. European co-production is something we can also discuss later for XR content. Thank you.
And sorry, Ellen, that is for people who have projects that they are in the middle of production, they're looking for funding or looking
all
for...
stages, from POC, WIP, even to the final cut. So we taking all projects in all stages, and we try to also favor first-timers.
And it's also not just documentary, right? It's everything.
No, it's all everything. Like as Stella was saying, it's artistic creation. It's not just for film creation, because the language, as you mentioned earlier, is it the new language that we're talking about in XR creation, in the storytelling? It's something really beyond what maybe a film festival can take in. So we are not a film festival, we're a festival that's for XR or the immersive content.
Thank you. And to my far left, we have Sebastian.
Yes, thank you. So my name is Sebastian Sorg. I'm coming here from Munich. I mostly, I would say, not a real producer anymore, but I'm a consulting project developer. So most of the time I'm developing projects and trying to find the right strategy to fundraise them. And more or less 50% of my work consists of trying to fundraise or consulting also funders. So as my background is filmmaking, then I was managing a film market that also contains some XR transmedia. I moved to funding and was a funding executive at the regional funding, and I was also taking care of some pilot funding, and I'm really very happy that you also managed to offer this here, because it's a very, very important move and a very important step, as I would say. Yes, so that's my background, and what's my entry point? I found out when I was part of the funding, of the regional funding, I found out that, wow, it's so exciting to work with creators. The former filmmakers, as we say, would call them creators, because they're so curious on what they are doing, and each project for new is a new start and a new way to transform or to tell or to experience. So that would be my entry point. That's why I decided that I have to stay in that area.
Are you doing mostly documentary projects or supporting or everything as well?
No, it's actually both. In the XR field, it's kind of
more fluid.
I would not really think about it. It's limitless, but there are classical documentary projects as well that I'm managing.
I think that's interesting, because I feel like in the XR field, we've gotten away from these genre differentials a little bit, because things are more hybrid than I think now films are catching up to that hybridity. So I guess maybe we could start with this idea of challenges, and maybe I think if you're a filmmaker and you're thinking about maybe doing a piece in XR, some big questions that you have is, should this be in XR? Can this be in XR? How do I make this in XR? How do I fund it in XR? So I think those are the biggest challenges. That's everything, basically. That's your whole piece. So maybe we can just start on the idea of the challenges of knowing what to make in the first place. I don't know, a few years talking about transitioning from traditional filmmaking into more XR work, and you also have had experience with more traditional now. So maybe you could speak to some of those challenges of deciding to take that first step into moving into a different form.
Well, what would be the best example? It's a crucial question, and I would start with the psychology of fundraising or of funding, the psychology of funders as well. Because at the moment, if I think about a project that's dealing with some XR format, it's just so important to really know why you are using this storytelling, this narrative, this format, this experience, like why it's really kind of texture. It's even more important than using, like, if I would be a painting artist, like what kind of, is it colored, is it black and white, is it like paint with oil or something? It's really something where you have to go deep into the story or into the issue to find. And on the other hand, also to justify why are you working with that format and asking for money for it. Why is it important to tell it in augmented reality or in 360 documentary format? What's the added value? It might be for you as an artist, and that's very often when I'm consulting filmmakers or creatives. It might be the great idea that you have to feel immersed, that's also already it could be a great idea to deal with and to work with. And if you have some money for the development, it's great to have that. But in the next step, in order to produce it, you just have to. You should not be overwhelmed by the critical questions. And that's really the crucial aspect on financing and funding such projects. You really have to justify why you're using it. That's it. But I have no concrete example right at the moment, I must say. I just remember how I was sitting with with some funders at a pitch last autumn, and we were first watching 90-minute cinematic feature-length documentary pitches. And there were up to 3 projects where we could agree right away they would be great XR experiences. Please, I really felt the urge to talk to those people, because I felt like nobody you won't find their audience, and you won't find a way to finance this project for a 90-minute cinematic release. And because we don't have the audiences anymore and anything, but it has so much potential, creative potential for XR. And other projects afterwards pitched for XR formats were just actually coming out of this idea of conventional narrative. So it's really the moment where parameters are shifting and where you have to discuss a lot at the very first moment. So that would be my experience right now on that.
Should I say something? If you have thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, I can share a process we are going through with a project which perhaps makes sense. We are making a film about elevators and an elevator community, and there is a huge community all over the world on the spectrum, usually on the autism spectrum, and who loves riding elevators because it's a multisensory experience that they can control. You start, you stop, and so we're making a film about this. So we wanted to find a way to enhance and communicate this kind of very special way of experiencing an elevator, and we're thinking, wow, let's do an XR thing. So we've been in contact with elevator companies, looking at flight simulators that can make all these things just to put us in this space and the place where we kind of really focus on the elevator. So we've been developing this idea for a long time. And then going back again to, oh yeah, we are in this VR world, we're sitting there alone, and it's like, okay, that's not what we want to do. We want to kind of co-experience these things. It's like, wait a minute, we have hundreds and thousands, millions of elevators all over the world. So we kind of went the other way around. It's like, okay, let's just use what is there in the reality. So all this kind of research and thing went like a whole round. So rather than staying into this, trying to invent a feeling or something, we're more like into, okay, how can we go to the real reality, or to the, that's what we call the extended reality now. So it's like, so it's more a process about what you're talking about, I think. It's like, why does it make sense to do this? Why should we spend money? Why should we? Yeah, so that's one of the projects we're on now. I was hoping to be more like, yeah, we were going to do this. And it's like, no, we actually made the round. It's like, no, we want to go back to another reality. Yeah, so it's just part of the process that I came to think of now when you spoke. So yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
One added aspect of immersive work now that is using different haptics and different and kind of like body simulations, because it's not just the visual now. We're also incorporating more sound design and more body feelings and ways that you can really share experiences that are even further than before when it was just a cinematic VR experience. And I think, Stella, you were saying that in the lab, sometimes people come in with ideas of something very XR and maybe they walk out with not XR or something totally different.
I want to say that I see it a lot because we read almost 100 applications in July every year, and then we select 9 projects. And it's interesting to see that the application that people have submitted in June, then they have a residency in end of September in Copenhagen for a year, for a week. They work and they come back to the festival in March. So there are different steps, and it's very interesting, also funny sometimes to see how much the decisions have just shifted and changed over the course of the months, because we keep asking them the questions. What is the medium? What is your audience? You know, I'm not sure if it's working. I hope it's working. So we keep asking them these questions again and again. And sometimes, you know, you see a completely different project from the application to almost a year later when they come with a prototype at CPH Docs. So it's very interesting. You know, and it's true. Especially, maybe I would say less experienced people that they want to experiment, they easily say, oh, VR, because VR, there is a funding in the region I live, in the country I live, or in Europe, as Creative Europe, so I want to jump into that, you know, train that goes fast. But then you ask them, but is it really what you're burning for? Is it really gonna really support your story? And then I think, and I find there's a responsibility of the lab, we want to create this platform and a safe space for people to take the time and the space to think creatively, take risks, as we talked before, and maybe really change completely their mind and go with something different. And that's totally okay with that. So yeah, I've seen it quite a lot in the course of this 8 months working with the projects.
So in terms of if you are a filmmaker and you have an idea, or you're a technologist and you have a thing to do, I mean, I think one of the biggest disconnects in this world is that those two things don't always, they're not the same skill sets. The storytelling does not necessarily match the technological knowledge, and you're often missing the other one. So how, if you're on either side of those, how do you make the matches? How do you realize the thing that you have in your head when you have no idea even where to start?
I can only say that the way we work is we really team up the project with mentors. So we collect people from, or not collect, but we pick people from around the world that, like, you know, fellow colleagues here, that they know, they've seen more, they know more, and we make them sit with one project for almost 4 months, and then, you know, guide the people. Because it is a very big, scary world out there, and a lot of trial and error. So we believe a lot in the power of, like, you know, peer-to-peer reviews, support from colleagues that have more experience, and mentors. And that's how we build the whole curriculum of the lab. So you need somebody to not tell you what to do, but ask you, as I said, the questions and make you think in a kind of psychological session thing. You know, what is your way to go with this project? But yeah, we use valuable. We have a lot of valuable mentors working with the projects to guide them.
For us, when we did our first project, we had an artist. She was a Sápmi artist. It was a project about Sápmi goddesses walking around in a park in Stockholm, trying to convey the abuse that the Sápmi people had suffered 100 years ago when they were measuring their skulls and all these things. So she had an idea, a very clear idea of what we wanted to do. But then most of the tech persons were like tech dudes. So the problem was for us really to kind of somehow convey this artistic idea to people who were technological, very bright and smart and creative, but how to transition between these two worlds was kind of the most difficult thing. And I still think there is a big gap, at least in Sweden, or where there is this, you can do so many things with the technology and everyone gets blinded by that rather than focusing on storytelling and what we want. I mean, that's why I guess we're here to talk about how to do that. So that, I mean, that was painful part of the time. Yeah, that's just...
I imagine you maybe see a lot of this, and maybe Ellen, you too, in the, I don't know, in the production market, if people are coming with ideas and you are kind of, there's people, it's like the market here where you're meeting with people, and so maybe I think the two of you probably both have that experience of seeing maybe a great idea that is early and needs some help pushing it to the right advice.
No? In Paris, we don't only run the annual event, the NewImages Festival. Since last year, the director has spun it off to a hub, so we taking residencies on immersive content. I think, as Stella mentioned, you know, from your first concept until your prototype, hello, you know, why? You know, for instance, NewImages has a very strong tie through CNC and has residency in Taiwan, writing residency. I remember one project we were all very excited upon receipt, and we gave the grant to this creator. It's like a really installation, interactive, all you can do, you know, like wow. But then when he came back with, he's like, oh, I'm just gonna do a 360. So what exactly actually happened during his residency in Taiwan is a big mysterious for me. Voila, so because I am a part-time producer myself, because I like this learning by doing. I don't come from the film background. I really try to work with participants in the market towards their next step. And I mean, our call for projects this year, we received over 100 projects to read them all through. To select the final 30, 40, because we also have partnerships. These residents, they also come back to our market for their next step. It's always very easy, why do you want to do XR? Because from a producer point of view, if you cannot convince yourself, if you might have difficulty putting on the headset, then, you know, next. Because if you're not convinced, I would tell you that it's easy perhaps to do a content, but then it's really, again, technology-wise, if you're not really tech-savvy, you make it a 360 is also a niche in XR, because I work with some of the best projects from Taiwan. We are very, very niche in 360. The last 2 years, 2022, the Venice best VR piece is a 360, The Man Who Couldn't Leave. So it's not a no-go in 360, because you have to find your own language. And we are all building this language together. So it's never too late for you if you come from the traditional film. But on the other hand, if you come from the traditional film, you have to remember one thing. In the VR creation or XR creation or immersive creation, you are no longer the director, because audience are the one who decided want turn left or turn right, or up and down, or turn 360 or 180. That's really beyond your control. So if you're really a control freak in your own creation, I would suggest you let go a little bit. And you have to give somehow the control to your audience or audiences, because now what is hit in the XR creation is about multiple player. So again, we were talking earlier, then now the gamification, all this in, you know, like because funding entities, they are also not satisfied with the nice 360 concept. They want the more the merrier, you know. So all these make it very interesting, different layers of entry point for you. Also, I always come from a non-film background. Again, I feel like a very simple observation. Those who were born after the World War II as a filmmaker, when you were born, there's cinemas, theaters for you ready. You know, all you need to do is find a distributor and da-da-da. But as an XR creator, you had to think about, you know, like I said, how to distribute, how to show it to the audience. You will be immediately asked that question, and that will already come back to your original creation process. And it's like, oh, you know, like, oh, it's much easier. It's not like what they taught in film school, that all you need to do from the film school theory is how to make a film. But in the XR, it's the Wild Wild West. You have to know from A to Z if you really want to kick off your project, because in your grant, if you don't know how to write about distribution strategy, you probably just put aside. So we're not discouraging you not to come in, but please be prepared, you know, so you feel better in this process because it's beautiful. I always say that, see, Venice is the one in competition that brings a lot of content creators that might not have the same exposure in the traditional film, but immediately they are seen by A-list film festivals and so on and so forth. So but this, again, Wild Wild West is not what you learn in the traditional film school. This is really, be prepared, but it's very adventurous, but yeah, let's see where you will take you. It's just, again, if you have a good topic, think about, it can be a feature length, but think about the immersive part, you know. Sometimes, if you have a small project, budget aside, try to do it with immersive, and make it nice for you to, so that people see, well, your dossier is complete because you know how to create and recreate with your own concept.
I'm going to come back to you, but just to touch on what she was saying about generations, because you are a teacher, and I'm wondering with your students, because they're probably more of the digital generation, is it something where they're taking to it easier, they're understanding it easier, this idea of XR work?
Well, yeah, as you were speaking, I was thinking about two entry points for the students. The students have the computer games background, which for them it's much easier to approach an immersive experience, like a much more complicated interactive VR piece. And a lot of them have classes on Unity development to make computer games. So creating a VR piece based on their experience with interactive pieces is kind of a small step. On the other hand, for those people that are more into filmmaking, starting to experiment even with a cheap 360 camera, at first they get quite excited just by the fact that they have a camera that can look all over the place, but then they can start experimenting and building with this language very early. So what I find most interesting is that we're talking about XR, but we're actually talking about such a huge spectrum of mediums that we are having cinematic VR, 6 degrees of freedom, 3 degrees of freedom, 180, 360. Well, all of these are so easy to understand once you put a headset on, or if you're using an AR application. But even trying to describe them is very complicated. So I have found that just introducing them in universities kind of easing in people into knowing what they really want to experiment with. And that is why, like Thessaloniki Film Festival is amazing that they have the XR exhibition, because you get a very good first-hand experience of different experiences that are all under this umbrella, but they're extremely different, extremely different. And I think, you know, that is why it is so complicated. VR, XR, MR, AR, BR is like, you know, I think this is part of the thing that we can help with producers and with artists to realize the whole palette that they can use.
Yeah, and with, I mean, not only but there's also so many ways to make. There's using a camera, there's photogrammetry, there's, you know, building worlds in Unity. There's all these different levels of creation, which you kind of have to understand first before you even start to think about how you might make something.
But on the other hand, for students nowadays, like having a photogrammetry on your mobile phone, it's all of a sudden you have a student that before we were thinking about this huge project of how we could create 3D content and having modelers and then all of a sudden you just scan around and use very cheap tools that you have every day, and then if you learn how to put them in an environment that you can access through a VR headset, then you're starting to experiment. And then you're starting to build this language that, you know, at the end of the day, just it's a practical thing. You just play with it and you start discovering new things. And you make a lot of people dizzy, actually, which is another issue, really.
Yeah, I mean, just to go back to you, because I think you probably also have that experience of having people with ideas and then you're helping them. At what stage are you kind of coming in and helping them think about what that might be?
Yes, and you might see a lot of challenges and problems, but it's a creative process in a way. I mean, having the background of filmmaking, you know that you have to write the film 3 times. You write it, you film it, and then you have to edit it. And in a way, okay, it's sometimes harder. But it was also bringing together compositions, like music compositions and documentary filmmakers, and I also had the feeling like it's 2 worlds. They need a common language. It's so hard to bring them together. And right now, talking about XR, I have the feeling it's the end of the first like Nouvelle Vague, where people really dared, and there are some legendary projects that everybody has seen and that were fascinating. And then everybody got a little bit frustrated and nobody expected too much. And now it's another opportunity for everybody to come in, and I see more and more either young people who have who are differently dealing with technical skills and with technical background, or also that's something that everybody always forgets, that theater is so close to XR. And I see, like, the most promising projects that were recently pitched to me came out of independent theater groups from really from the countryside. And in Bavaria, in Augsburg, for example, there's such a fascinating group of people, young people, who just decided that they would use augmented reality and mixed reality to produce their theater. Project, or the one project I'm co-developing at the moment has a documentary background from a group in Berlin, and they have just a different approach and they just dare more. It's like they don't have this idea of it needs to be the next Alexa moment or the next like cinematic IMAX thing. They just see the format or the tool in order to tell something or to have an experience, and that's something which is extremely exciting. I guess so. Yes, but just because it's important to talk about challenges, but on the other hand, for example, also in the funding aspect and the fundraising, if you have solved that justification, why am I using this technique, you have the best prerequisites at the moment to get financed. Because money is there, there's the urge for funders and also for others to invest into that formats. And there are not so many who have the same idea right at the moment. The community is now there, and there's a great dynamic. So you have a lot of opportunities. So challenges, but also a lot of opportunities.
Are we at that sweet spot right now where there's more people interested in opportunities than there are people who are making to take those opportunities? Like more funding is out there for not as many projects, or not really?
No, I would say funding is, there's never enough funding.
Funny,
it's funny, isn't it? And the money is never enough. If you ask a producer, how to calculate such a project, I mean, let's see how much money we get. And when we see what we can make out of it. But it's very diverse. The problem is that there are no conventions yet. It's not so easy. That also is an opportunity or not. And in Germany, for example, as in Europe, you have diverse funding schemes where you can try to fundraise. It's either art or games or sometimes dedicated XR funding, which is existing. But most of the time you have to spend the money in the place where you're producing, or you have a very elaborated co-production system structure by hand. But no, there's never enough money for one part, but there is money.
I think we were trying to put together a project several years ago, and we put a bid out to artists to kind of suggest treatments and budgets, and they ranged from $6,000 to $120,000 for the same 6-minute, VR film. So I think it's so wide open. It depends on what equipment you have and where you're living and what you're doing, and then that's just a very simple 360 piece. And then you're talking about different technological things, and I think we also go from individual filmmakers who are trying to fund their work. There's filmmakers who have kind of their own studios but only do their own work. And then there's these bigger studios, like in France, where they are XR studios funding many, 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 many filmmakers. So I think the landscape is very large for the funding. And maybe you could kind of give some input on that. Moving, okay, now you have your idea, you're ready to produce. Where now? What now?
Well, I, of course, just don't want to just promote, but I think if you have an idea, you want to kick off the funding or try to get your first bucket of. I think events like us, NewImages, CPH Lab, or maybe some other market type of events that can help you. Because if you're just alone by yourself as a creator and you're not a coder yourself, it's better that you go to markets that get exposure. And I think there's also, compared to the traditional film, is that the lack of proper XR producer. Because an experienced XR producer can get you all the funding necessary and tell you or discuss with you what would be the techniques or what art to use, because you're VR, AR, MR, and XR, and now you have the new Apple Vision Pro and so on and so forth. So these are a proper economic question that the producer should be able to help you with. So if you're alone, just a creator, find a partner that can help you to configure that all together, because in the end, we all want our project to be seen out from a creator's point of view, and you also want to fix your scale. Don't go, oh, I want this project to go to the spaceship or something like that. That's always nice, but I would suggest do it nicely, small but beautiful, your first project, and then you move on. That will get your credibility going and go on. Then once you have one or two very nice produced project, and you get to being seen in a few film festivals, then that will open all the doors for fundraising after, trust me. But be a little bit, have a first-hand experience, and then the path after will be much easier. I think go to the events that you can meet your soulmates, you can meet your co-producer, and then trust me, the production companies in Europe, they always look for the best new ideas they can pitch to their fundraising entities. And try with, there's always like otherwise the funding structure is very similar to the film. You have the writing, you have then proof of concept, then WIP, and then distribution, so on and so forth. So I would say that I'm very happy that I work with Paris, because in France you have probably the most structured ecosystem. And so please come to my market, meet the French. And otherwise, like even the distribution, we have 3 agencies. They do, you have Diversion, that's like their work mainly with film festivals. You have Lucy Realities, now they have their Unfriend collection. They are specialized in contents with the museums or cultural institutions. And then you have the almighty Atlas V and the Astria. They are really for online distribution. And then in France, you have MECF and a few other small studios. They are doing multiple user experiences. So it's really rich in France, but then the competition is higher than while back in Germany, thanks to its political system. So as a producer, you can actually do some window shopping, if I understand well, if you have a partner in Bavaria and then in Berlin. So that's also how you, with the proper producer, he or she can help you to find the right structure, funding structure. Then again, I think once you have idea is that don't hesitate to try the experiences you can have. And luckily, in a film festival, all the contents are properly curated. It's not that you should go out and hunting for content. So use your best opportunity. The festival has done a good job for you. You know, the headset is ready, so you don't even have to configure yourself technically. If you have tried to done that before yourself, you know what I mean. So try as many as possible, because then you can see what is acceptable or accepted as storytelling as a current trend, and where you can make a breakthrough if you have a similar concept, or maybe you were so eager to make a content and boom, voila, this year there are already 10 experiences on the same topic. Where is your way out? I mean, we have also be very pragmatic about our approach.
Yeah, I think you raised, before we were talking a little bit about the separations between, or the interactions between interactive design and art, which is one kind of factor you need to think about when you're creating, and then also this relationship between games and immersive work. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts about this. I know that you spoke a little bit about this, games and immersion, and theater is another large area of...
I think that for some reason, I don't know if it has to do with cinematic VR. That was kind of the first thing that was introduced to most people because the first headsets worked with mobile phones, so it was easier to screen virtual reality cinema in that sense. But the more that you see VR pieces or XR pieces have less to do with cinema and more to do with a kind of an extended theater feeling, because you're actually, even directing a VR piece, the things that you can attract attention, the attention of the viewers, which might be sound or lighting or action, are much closer to being on top of a stage and directing the attention, rather than using lenses and editing and things that are more accustomed to cinematic language. And then when you add interaction to it, then you have a huge language that has already been established in computer games that in a way it is the same not to study and bring parts from it when you get into interactive design in VR. On the other hand, coming back to funding, I find it very exciting that most VR projects are fine, are totally fine. They challenge sensations. And I think that is something that it would be good to mention. It's really what VR storytelling has more to, spatial storytelling, let's put it this way, has more to do about new sensations that are offered to audiences. And do not need to have the most advanced computer graphics to do it. So all of a sudden I was impressed with the Eye and the Eye, this project that is displayed here, amazing soundtrack. Even though the graphics are not, that you would never buy a game with these graphics, but the experience of it, it's amazing. You have the stereoscopy, the feeling of embodiment, the way that you can fly around, and the things that, how you can navigate the space. So I think we should really get away from thinking about XR as an extension of cinema and start seeing it as a really hybrid art form that is really a kind of new medium open to use knowledge from theater, games, interactive design, interactive documentaries, a huge, it was a very big, story of these in the past. So, yeah, I don't really see it as cinema that much, to be honest.
like it remembers me of one of the most impressive interactive storytelling things. I don't remember the name of it, but actually, basically, it was a scroll dog. So it was extremely prominent in Germany, something around 8 years ago, and it remembered me very much of Chris Marker and La Jetée. I mean, that's just using stills in the right way and with a kind idea of storytelling. But it brings us back to this moment of this Nouvelle Vague moment, and remembering my first Nouvelle Vague experiences. Of course, it's not only entertaining to watch a film like Out of Breath. It's every time thinking over what we are actually doing and how we are dealing with media, and then suddenly we are out of the challenge. There's also a kind of idea or a great storytelling moment that could happen, absolutely. But it's a very good example that you just mentioned. It's really not important to have like the best criteria or something. It's really just to interrogate what are we doing and how are we telling or not. And is it interactive or not? Could be. Wonderful, yeah.
Well, I think also like you have to have one thing, like you have to have really wonderful visuals that can move you, or you have to have a really great story, but maybe the visuals don't have to be that great, or you have to have really good interactivity, but maybe the visuals don't have to be 100% professional. There has to be something that makes it worth it, you know? But I wonder if kind of this, I remember when VR cinema came out and people thought, oh, this is going to be the next thing, and then it really hasn't been the next thing. Have we already moved on to the next thing? Have we already moved on to more interactive? You were saying multiplayer games is now the thing. I mean, are we done with just 360? We're already into AI-generated interactive multiplayer games?
I think something we observe after, especially after the COVID, that everything is coming back to physical, even film festivals and all the exhibitions. And so the experience economy is probably what is driving the content creation in a way. The so-called LBVR or LBE, you know, is the next thing actually for immersive content creators from an economic point of view, because what you provide is something you cannot be substituted at home. The at-home economy should, you know, if you just want to stay at home and you get a headset, but then the majority of the content creators are actually, again, from the economic point of view, looking to the LBVR, the experience things you can, you know, like LBVR should be something you cannot do at home. It's not a headset you have home, so that's where we see the trend is going, especially in France. You have so many. Like if you go to Paris this spring, you can, from the same company, they have 4 experiences running in Center Paris, Notre Dame, Eden and Notre Dame, the multiple player, and then you have the next 2-3 weeks in Musée d'Orsay. They have the 150 years of Impressionism. So again, another multiple user experience to take you back to the 19th century with all the painters at the time, Paris at night, and da-da-da. And then I think in the National Museum of Natural History, the same studio also put up another multiple user experience that has had a huge success about evaluation of biological evolution in the last many million, thousands of years. So that's the next thing, because what immersive can bring you is actually something you cannot have at home. Otherwise, you know, it's like the battle between Netflix, OTT, and also the traditional cinema. So what can the traditional cinema bring you if you can watch everything, or you wait a few weeks or months at home? Then you can watch on Apple TV, Netflix, you know, to name a few. So this is the immersive that you have to think about, again, from the economic point of view, what cannot be replaced. If you can do being a traditional film angle, then do it. Please don't struggle to go into immersive if you cannot convince yourself why and how. Because if you cannot convince yourself, I think in the end, your project, your content, the outcome would not be satisfying. So for creators, you also have to think, think in the shoes of an audience. Why you want to do it in immersive? If you like the idea, then persuade your producer, your colleagues to go take the journey with you. If you cannot even be convinced, then please do a nice, beautiful, traditional film projects, and then try more. Yeah, so I think that location-based entertainment is where the immersive content we see that going, like theater. See, that's also location-based, because why people don't stop going to, if they can have use the experience at home if they watch. Coming back to the 360, I think the 360, when the interactive projects are getting more the mainstream in film festivals, just right before the pandemic, 19, I think that's the turning point when 17, 19, you see a lot of 360. Also because, for instance, many studios start to come into VR, so they try with 360 and then move to interactive. But I think there's still 20% in the film festival that 360 can still, it depends how you tell your story. Again, I'm from Taiwan, so we do have very good 360 content, including, 2022 November, right? So there is All That Remains. So that's actually the creator, the director, he's a theater, a traditional theater director. And then he found 360 as the medium to do his next gen creation. So it depends how you tell your story, how you package your story again. It's about, again, the immersive storytelling is how you tell the story again, why and how, and the transition, why you, from a traditional filmmaker, all of a sudden you want to jump into VR creation. You have to package it too for yourself in your deck, in your presentation, and that's the part of storytelling that can make your project stand out. Having said that, when we talk about the content creation, it's not just about what you see in the headset or on your smart devices. It's actually about the whole setting. So that's why theater comes now being very popular with the immersive theater concept in VR. In France, I think last year we have 5 or 6 projects that really stand out as immersive theater. It's about when you enter the space, so when you do your design of the experience, once for the audience to arrive on the spot, the whole host, everybody, before you put on your headset until you take it out and you leave the space, the whole experience should be designed. It's not something, click, I click the go on the computer and you start to experience, and oops, controller, no. The whole experience starts from the moment you arrive on the space. So that's why location-based is important, because again, if you can experience at home, you don't need to go out and pay. Now easily in France, this experience I just mentioned, it's the one in Musée d'Orsay is 32 euros. The one with Notre Dame is probably 29. So it's a movie ticket you pay. So why? The counterbalance you should also think about.
I think also, like for traditional documentary filmmakers, you were thinking about audience in the sense that maybe you had an issue that you wanted to get across, so it was important for you to raise awareness to the audience, or maybe you were. I'm an artist and I just have this film that I really need to make, and you're not thinking so much about the audience. So when it comes to XR, when you're just making a film, you can show it or you cannot show it, but that's kind of, maybe you get TV, maybe there's a theater, maybe there's a festival. But with XR, it's, I think, quite more complicated, because the distribution and the exhibition options are far more limited and challenging. So how you come from more of the exhibition side in terms of, say, like CPH Docs Festival.
It has an interactive exhibition, so it's a public-facing exhibition that people pay a small fee, but very small, and they can experience. This year we have around 15 pieces that they will experience in an art gallery in the city center of Copenhagen. So, yeah, the programming is very, very different the way you do it. We call it not us, but it is called like satellite programming, but it became so much, becoming over the years such an important part of the festival programming, because at least in Copenhagen and the national guests we have, they are more and more into these experiences. They have traveled, they've been to other festivals, they've been to some, as Ellen said, you know, art halls and exhibition halls in Copenhagen. They've been hosting this kind of experiences the last few years, so they're more aware and experienced as an audience. So for us, setting up an exhibition of this kind, you know, it has to be at high level. It's not experimental. It is experimental in the format and the themes, but we deal with that as it's an exhibition, but then, you know, a proper art space. So yeah, it's a very important part of the festival. It's growing. I see it here that they have started a couple of years ago, and it's a separate part of the festival here in Thessaloniki. And I encourage everybody to go and see. I don't know how it's called, Nipyagogio. Sorry. The glass house, sorry. In the beginning of the harbor, they have the whole VR exhibition selection there, which is great. So we see it more and more as part of traditional documentary or film festivals. We set aside resources. We invest, you know, we do research to find who are the artists to invite every year, and there is a lot of effort to put a very good level of exhibition there for the audience, both professionals, that, okay, we have a bit more of experience because we go around a bit more, but also to a public, to the general public that they're starting now to have this opportunity to experience. Yeah, I found, and this is, I think, also where I feel that the festivals, we hold the responsibility, although it sounds a bit heavy, but in a sense of, you know, we are raising awareness. We're eventually, especially if you work a lot with younger people and schools, you're educating, in many brackets, you know, the audience and the viewers of the future. So I think it's we hold the responsibility of what kind of content, stories we are putting in our festival program.
But I think that idea of, I think a lot of festivals are now experimenting with having some XR parts or immersive parts of their programs, but this is so much easier said than done, because it's not like, oh, we just have to find another screen that we can throw a digital movie on. You have to find a space, and you have to find people to you know, volunteer and operate the cameras. And I mean, your exhibition is very smooth. I'm very impressed with how well it's run.
The complexity is much bigger.
The complexity is
the production, the equipment you need to have that could be very expensive to something really basic. So production-wise, because I've been working on festival productions before I move into the specific the lab, it is much challenging. So when I go to festivals and I see the effort, I know how the result. I know that there is a lot of effort behind. Yeah. But at the same time, I find that it's, you know, it's a new revenue stream for festivals. It's a new way to get different kind of funding. As somebody said before, yeah, you can apply to Creative Europe for game, but you can apply also in the art strand. So you can also differentiate a bit where your funding comes from. So you don't necessarily need to compete with everybody else with the same pot of money, but you can be a bit more creative where the money comes from. So I think also there's opportunities for the festival as a revenue stream. Starting to be at least a revenue stream, and new audiences that they wouldn't necessarily come to a documentary film festival, but they might come because they're younger, they have been natives on that since. So I found there are many opportunities, and I think that's at least why I feel that our festival is doing it and pushing it every year and trying to get better and better every year.
And I wonder if from kind of the production and supportive side of things, does the exhibition make your decisions of how you produce things or what kind of form? Does it ever influence the choices you make in funding something? Or, I mean, not everybody is looking to make a profit necessarily, but there's also, I think, a lot of choices you can make just creatively and technologically in making pieces that may affect how they're exhibited. Does that ever come into the conversation?
Okay, I can I can share my experience because I'm not a curator or on the artistic program, but I do advise you guys that if you if you want to create a piece in immersive content, think about different formats. You have to let the festival programmer to understand that you're flexible. Because if you insist that I want 100 meters square and chances if you were selected to Venice and all these big festivals, it's your production cost. They don't cover anything. So maybe your national film board will support you one way or another, but you never know until you get selected, and there's a lot of application going on and so forth. So, so if you think about big installation, think about light, medium, and full scale. Voila. So that's will also help the programmers to understand that it's possible to show you a piece. They really want to show you a piece, but if you make it too difficult to produce for them, I'm sorry. So that's a very practical tips for you to maybe think about when you design your production.
I agree 100%. On these very practical aspects, and concerning the creative process, it's also that you sometimes need to try out a different understanding on what will be the outcome, like what will like concerning like what's the product, what will happen at the end. When I was starting producing documentaries, I was very surprised who would watch my film at the end at which festival, and that's the situation that you are now confronted with. So you should have maybe sometimes imagine it as if you are inscenating a theater play for one time, and then you might not be able to store it, and that's it. But on the other hand, could also contain like a very simple format that you could use all the time. I mean, regarding augmented reality projects, it's something that where you can cross the limits of station-based experiences. So both is possible, but you have to be very, very flexible. And regarding the financing, I would not, unless you are very like heading for a very commercial project, I would not think about revenues, but I would think about, because there's too many surprises. I could tell you about projects that that were dead and nobody expected anything, and suddenly out of the nothing they were really sold and licensed. On the other hand, in Germany, for example, you only get funding if you can prove during the funding process that you are counting on revenues. Even if they don't come, you always have to keep that in mind. So that's still some part of the process where you have to be, in one way, realistic, on the other hand, open-minded, and should not be frustrated, and never sell your car or your house where you grew up in order to finance. No, don't do it, but try to find the right way to finance it. Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, I have so many questions. Because I'm studying here in Thessaloniki in Apifita in film school. So we have some lessons about VR and all of this. And the first question is, what's the difference between a VR film and a VR documentary?
What was the second thing?
A VR film and VR documentary. Because here in festival for 2 years, I see all the VR they show, and I didn't find any difference between what they show now and what they show in the film festival, for example. I don't know, because in movies, you know, what is a film and what is a documentary.
But documentaries are films.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, I think we often mix up feature with fiction, but documentaries can also be features and fictions can be shorts. I think the line is blurred with VR more so than in a traditional. I mean, this is a documentary festival, but still many films are hybrid. They're not there's fiction elements, and I think VR brings in more of that hybridity than in traditional film. Sorry.
I think so, especially because they incorporate a lot of animation elements, the interactive ones. So already incorporating animation in VR means that you're kind of skidding away with the idea that you're just documenting something. Because already coming to a documentary festival, you just start realizing, again, the spectrum of documentary, that you have a lot of things that could be considered much more experimental cinema, or things that it's a much wider array of things that you can see here. But in VR, I think that as soon as you get into the area of interactive storytelling and animation, it's obvious that the line is going to be blurred even more. But does it really matter?
No,
it's really...
I have the same sense, and I didn't know if it was just my sense, and I didn't understand what's the difference between both of them.
It's a good question.
Yeah, perfect.
Did you have a second question?
Yes. The school is about 5 years, so we learn about montage, we learn about how to film, about all this, everything. And we have extra to learn about unity. How it's too difficult to have both of them, to have a storytelling, to know about, to use the light, and put them all to unity. And I don't know what others people do. For example, if they don't know about storytelling, if they know just the program, they learn the other, or they find people to cooperate and to do something together. I don't...
Could share something about the lab in that, because we do have, as I said, different kind of profiles, people applying and getting into the program, and some of them, they come as a solo artist and they do everything just because they feel comfortable and they are tech-handy people, or at least they want to experiment and they want to make their hands dirty. But there are some other people that they come and clearly said, I'm giving the art direction, I'm the artist. I have, like, for example, one project, the first Greek project we have now at the lab from Yolanda Markopoulou. I mean, she has a theater background, she goes with the storytelling, the ambience and everything. And of course, she needs the support of technical people. I don't say that it's easy to create a team, because that's also a matter of resources and funding and everything. But I think it really depends on how the artist keep referring to this as an artist that goes with that. Some people are really, maybe they're not good enough, but they want to learn, and they take all the extra time and all the extra training and opportunities to learn. You need to learn all these kind of languages to build their project, and they keep the whole process in their hands. And some other people, they just say, this is what I am good at, this is where I want to focus, but I need to build a team around me. And then they go with creating the team. But it doesn't need to be that everybody needs to do everything. It's as many of us said, it's more about finding your language and your artistic passion and what you burn for.
And it's also no different than traditional filmmaking. Oftentimes you hire a cinematographer and you hire an editor because you don't have the cameras and you don't have the experience to do those things. So I think the problem is finding the people, because I think there's not a great network out there for us to understand who's doing what. And for instance, I'm based in Turkey, and there's a lot of technological people who are experimenting all the time with the hand tracking motions and all of this. But there's very little people making stories. And so there's a hard way to kind of connect these two people. And if you have a story, you don't know where to find the people who know how to use Unity. So I think this is one of the biggest challenges. And I'm seeing Thanos is lurking, and we only have 2 minutes. So I'm just going to do a very you want to say something
There's
before?
something I don't want to forget, because preparing the panel, Dimitris was remembering me about one very useful
Yes.
white paper that we just published around Venice Immersive. So if you could show it, the screenshot, you can very easily find it in the internet on the. It's called Taildeck, www.taildeck.com, and it's aiming at everybody who is interested in spatial storytelling, so immersive storytelling with a classical background, and really exploring the diverse added values of spatial storytelling. It's very interesting and very rewarding. If you keep track to this, it's a start of a platform that's aiming at prototyping spatial stories. An open source platform for the community that brings together all kind of experiences from the creators of this. It's a Swiss company actually, but they got some money during pandemic to bring all these efforts together and to publish them. So it's not commercial, but
it's
could
important
be,
to
could
close
be
on
an added
that,
value.
to close on that sense that apart from the difficulties that we just discussed about exhibition, the new sensations that you can offer to audiences are so new and so exciting. And they're kind of totally unique to the new mediums. And maybe this is what it's interesting, very interesting read of giving ideas of the new things that you can do with this medium, like proximity, how people interact with objects, how people feel their bodies, how you can use empathy in storytelling in completely unique new ways. So this exciting new venue is here, a part of the problems that are obviously, you know.
In our last 30 seconds, if one is XR curious, where else should they look aside from this fantastic primer? If you're at home, where can you experience some XR? Do you have a site or a place that you recommend people go?
I think the Oculus Store TV has, some free content that's already very much, well prepared to start with. You can go to film festivals, see their curation list, and go to museums and stuff like that. Yeah, it's pretty already very good. But I think the selection from film festival is usually very professionally made.
And that's an extra plug. Go see the exhibition, which is running from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. in the Glass House there. And there's some great work in there. And as Dimitris said, it crosses the range of different styles and approaches, and it's a really nice primer to see how you can use some of these tools. So thank you for joining us, and continue to be XR curious.